start with the quarterbacks, Fabs. Who's moved up a little bit this week?
Jared Goff has moved significantly up 6 or 7 spots from last week because he's got the Jags. And
That'll
what
do
Sam
it.
Darnold couldn't do, Jared Goff should do this week.
Well,
And that is
I don't know. Jared
dominate
Goff had some
Jacksonville.
interception problems last week,
Well,
too.
I think that was an outlier. So he's a very good start. Russell Wilson, I have a QB8 this week against Baltimore. Russell's been good. 2 games over 18 points. And in that third game, he should have had over 18 points, but 2 touchdown passes got negated by a penalty. And then George Pickens had the same foot down twice instead of 2 feet. And then finally, Lindsay mentioned Justin Herbert yesterday. I have him at QB11 this week against Cincinnati. She is all back in love with Justin Herbert. She's got the googly eyes going.
Googly
Her husband Matt should be very jealous, but Justin Herbert is a startable asset. And and a lot of players out there, fantasy players, were able to grab Herbert off the waiver wire this week.
Who's a faller this week at quarterback?
Patrick Mahomes falls out of my top 10 this week. He's still at 13, but I don't love the matchup against Buffalo. Jordan Love, who didn't play last week, I've got him at 14. I may drop him even deeper than that. Remember, the Chicago Bears have only allowed one quarterback to throw multiple touchdown passes against them. This is not a good matchup. It's going to be a really low-scoring game in Chicago. And Sam, I am down to 19 this week after his absolute stink bomb of a performance against Jacksonville. He's got Tennessee, and Tennessee's defense is good. And it's also a road game for Darnold. So he is down into the late teens and a super flex option at best this week.
Running backs. Who's a riser?
Chase Brown for sure. Last week had a very good game, even though the matchup was bad. Had a touchdown, caught a ton of balls out of the backfield. We're still not sure about T. Higgins. The matchup isn't even good this week, against the Chargers. I don't care. I'm playing him. He's my RB13 right now, RB12. Kareem Hunt, the aforementioned, he is my RB13 against Buffalo. So he's moved up, and I could see moving up maybe a couple of spots because Buffalo's defense is so bad against running backs. And then Audric Estime, he's not a top 24 running back. I have him at RB27, but based on what we saw last week and based on Sean Payton's comments this week, he should continue to get some burn, and he's got a way better matchup than he did last week. I mean, the Chiefs are one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league against running backs from a fantasy perspective. Atlanta, not so much. So Audric Estime is a viable flex starter after probably, I would guess, Lindsay, I didn't look at the numbers, but being the most added player in fantasy football after last night.
Who's falling at running back?
Even though he had a really good game last week, James Cook, again, it's KC. I've got him at RB19. And he's a very good player. Don't get me wrong. And I know you're going to have to play him.
Yeah.
But we will talk about the stats for start him and sit him tomorrow when it comes to the Chiefs and James Cook. But he dropped at 19. J.K. Dobbins has dropped down to 20. I had him up in the top 12 last week. I don't like that Gus Edwards got double-digit carries. And Cincinnati, if you look at the numbers, they're actually not bad against running backs at all. They held Derrick Henry. I know he had a touchdown last week, but Derrick Henry, if memory serves, didn't hit 80 yards on the ground last week. He was under his average for the year. And then DeAndre Swift, I mean, listen, you could just put any bear here, and that's sort of the storyline right now. And what I think is going to be a lower scoring game, DeAndre Swift is down to RB23.
The wide receivers now and the risers for week 11.
George Pickens is at wide receiver 8. It's the highest I've ever had him ranked ever. Because he's got Baltimore.
High.
I mean, Baltimore, they just gave up 55 to Jamar. Yeah. And he and Russell are clicking. Russell's just, kind of throwing that Russell moon ball up, and George Pickens is going up there, contested catch guy, and making plays. So I've got him at wide receiver 8. I've got Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 13. Good matchup against Atlanta this week, and he's been very good. People are not talking about Cortland Sutton, but his numbers, more often than not, in the last month have been very, very good. Finally, Cedric Tillman, my guy. I've got him at wide receiver 18. Some people might think that's a little bit too high. Jimmy Crack Corn, and I don't care. I'm a big fan of this guy. And listen, his 3 games before the bye, I mean, all more than 18 points. And the Browns seem to always get into high-scoring games because their defense is not very good. And this is New Orleans. No Marshawn Lattimore. So give me all the Cedric. I have Cedric Tillman ranked ahead of Tyreek Hill this week.
Who's falling?
Tyreek. We talked about it yesterday. I mean, he's had one top 10 finish. He's had one top 20 finish. He just hasn't been great. And a lot of his finishes are in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. It's been really bad. And I understand it's Tyreek Hill, and that the fear is, well, I sit him and he's going to have his best game of the year. I get it. It's week 11 though, guys. When's it going to happen? And the Raiders, you may laugh about the Raiders all day long. The Raiders actually are good against perimeter receivers. And the Raiders are good against receivers. Maybe that's because teams run the ball down their throats, but go look at the numbers. I mean, I can look them up for you right now. But the Las Vegas Raiders are not bad against wide receivers this year. For whatever reason it is, again, maybe teams are running on them. That could be the case. The Raiders have given up the sixth fewest points to wide receivers this year. So, I mean, that's and to the perimeter, and I'm going to look this up quickly. To the perimeter, I think they're even tougher, which again seems strange because they're the Raiders. They have allowed the fewest points per game to the perimeter this year. 12.8 points per game to perimeter receivers. They've only given up one touchdown to a receiver who's lined out wide all year long. So again, I mean, take it for what it is. I mean, I'm giving you the stats. So Tyreek Hill has dropped. My guy, Jaden Reed, I dropped him down to wide receiver 27 this week because I don't like the matchup against Chicago. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. He's a flex starter this week. I hate to say it because I dig him, but he's a flex starter. And then I got DJ Moore way down. And not for nothing, but Green Bay's defense is good, again, especially against the wide receivers. So this is not a great week to have Bears and Packers in the passing game for that matter. All right, dirtbags, let's talk about other ways to play fantasy football. Do you guys know about Prize Picks? It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks.
You can turn your hot takes into cash, Fabs. Listen here to figure out which players have the best matchups of the week. We always talk about guys that we like more or less depending on their matchup. Then take that information and flip on over to Prize Picks. See if you think that those players that we talked about will have more or less than the numbers that they have attached to them. It could be number of catches. It could be number of yards. It could be number of touchdowns. You can do it all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick and easy. And if you have a strong take about a guy that you don't have on your fantasy team, this is the place to put that take to work for you. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code FANTASYDIRT and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FANTASYDIRT on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need a win to receive the $50 bonus. It's like free money, guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's talk about tight ends now and who is rising this week, Fabs.
This is unbelievable. You want to talk about a Jekyll and Hyde season? Let's go through Mark Andrews. Okay.
It's all over. Yeah.
Now listen to this, Lindsay. Listen, ready? Mm-hmm. Week 1, 3.4 points. Week 2, 9.1 points. He didn't score a point in week 3 or 4. And then it started to get better. 9.5 points, not great. In week 5, his last 5 games, 15.6, 20.1, 14.6, 4.6, not good against Denver, 18.8. Yeah. So now you can deploy Mark Andrews as you would have when you drafted him way back in August or the beginning of September. He's back among the elite players, at least in terms of the numbers in the last month. I've got him at tight end 5 this week. TJ Hawkinson at tight end 6. He had a very good game last week. It was his best game. I know there's only been 2 games that he's played, but you always worry about a guy coming off an ACL. Are they going to bring him along slowly? He led the Vikings in catches and receiving yards last week. So get him back into your lineup this week. And then Dallas Goedert, who popped back on the injury report. So keep tabs on his status, but he had a touchdown last week. I have him ranked at tight end 12. So in that startable range from a fantasy perspective. Last week I had him in the lower teens, like 18, 19. So I moved him up to the point where you could start him over like a Jake Ferguson, for example, but he did pop on the injury report. So just keep tabs on his status for tomorrow night's game. The fallers, Dalton Schultz, although I love my revenge narrative, but if Nico is back, I mean, Schultz has played most of the season where the Texans have been down their best wide receivers, whether it's been Nico and Diggs. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't scored double digits all year long. So, I mean, if you're into the revenge game narrative, okay. Zach Ertz, the last couple of games have been kind of crappy. Yep. He's got Philly tomorrow night. I don't like playing mid guys on Thursday night because I'm afraid of the stinker, which happened to me last week with Mike Gesicki. And then Cole Kmet, at this point, he's droppable. He's probably been droppable for a couple of weeks, but again, Bears. That offense can't get things going. He
Oh my
said
gosh.
2 games with 24 or more points every single game outside of that duo, single digits.